a will.
Well gathered here are three of the people who contributed to the Living Standards Commission: Phil Bentley, the Managing Director of British Gas, Sally Russell of the website NetMums, and Clive Cowdery, the Chair of the Resolution Foundation and a businessman. Also with us is David Willetts, the Universities Minister and author of a book called The Pinch: How the Baby Boomers Stole Their Children's Future. We'll take the issues in three sections. But first, David Willetts, I'd like to ask you, this isn't about recession, it's not about retrenchment, it is about something having gone fundamentally wrong with the way the economy works. Do you accept the analysis?
Yes, I do. I mean, it traces this trend back to the beginning of this century, even earlier in the US. I think it's a very important report, and it's something that's going to promote a lot of debate.
And there's no sign it's going to get any better without some sort of action, and frankly, sticking plaster sort of action is what much of this proposal is.
Well, I don't think we should. Nothing is inevitable.
Okay.
And you can do things. I mean, like even in the report we've just seen, those apprentices, the government is creating more apprentices, absolutely, to try to have more people in those middle-income jobs, which is where this report identifies the squeeze is happening. And I think we can partly tackle that by training people, giving them the best qualifications to get well-paid, secure jobs. That's what more apprentices are about. But there's a lot more we've got to do. But even in a recession, we're trying to tackle it.
Clive Cowdery, let's look at one of the central worry in this is that, you know, people's standards of living are not rising because rates of relative pay are not rising at the rate they should be rising. Why does that matter? I mean, it isn't as if people were starving in 1993, which is the comparison we're getting to.
Well, one of the reasons, of course, people haven't been starving since 1993 or later in the 1990s was the introduction of tax credits, which means we've been topping up household incomes to the tune of around £500 to £600 a year. We now have a tax credit bill that's at £32 billion a year, and I don't think anybody believes across the whole political spectrum that that amount of money can go up. And therefore, that lever for topping up income is not available to us anymore. The other lever that households had available was personal borrowing. But personal borrowing in households is now running at 140% of income. Therefore, that lever is unavailable. We have to do something that makes work pay. And that means increasing the skills we've talked about here and putting the focus on how we can get more people out to work by removing second earner problems.
How worried were you by what you found out in this investigation?
I was really worried, actually. I was really surprised to see, you know, the original graph actually that was shown to me before I joined the Commission was one which showed sort of GDP going up, and then suddenly there's a disconnect and you find that living standards used to go up in line and are now sort of plateauing. And to see that it's going on for such a long period is quite worrying.
I'm going to come to you in a second, Phil Bentley, but of course the most obvious solution to the problem of keeping yourself warm and buying enough to eat is a transaction as old as civilization. You sell your labour or your skills. The worry is that for lots of reasons, the ability of companies to move jobs anywhere in the world, the disappearance of entire categories of job, and a certain lethargy which overtakes nations when no one fears going hungry anymore, it just doesn't seem to work so well anymore. Let's talk about work and wages first. Here are some facts and figures then from Professor Stephen Machin of the Resolution Foundation's Commission on Living Standards.
So the chart shows growth in productivity and wages. So productivity is output per worker. Wages is the wage of the median worker. That's the person at the middle of the wage distribution, the typical worker in the economy. It shows between 1970 and 1990 they tracked one another quite well. They grew at a very similar rate. After that, productivity continues to trend upwards very rapidly, whereas real wages don't grow very fast at the median at all.
Now, Phil Bentley, it seems to me that the request from both employers and business generally and government was that productivity in this country had to be improved. People have done that. Productivity has improved, but they haven't seen the benefit.
Well, I think there's some companies that have invested in their workforce, and you talk about the old tradesmen of old. These were the skills that when people didn't want to go to university, they were well paid. Those like those apprentices you've seen from British Gas, they earn £28,000 a year when they're fully qualified, and they've got skills that are available now for to make a good living for the rest of their lives. And I think what struck me as being on the Commission was there were still a lot of industries paying the minimum wage, and And I don't think that's a good thing. We haven't got enough companies investing in labour and investing in skills.
Yeah, but look, you're a businessman. Why would any businessman in his right mind pay more than he needs to?
Because it's good business to do that. When our engineers go into our customers' homes, our customers expect them to be the very best. They're properly trained. We're working in a hazardous environment, gas, electricity, carbon monoxide. We want the best engineers.
Sure.
We've got the best engineers, and our customers expect that.
Your customers pay for it through the nose too, as you know. I mean, energy price. What's the price of gas done since 2000?
Well, the price has gone up, and I knew you'd ask me that question, but let me just unpick
Of course
that
I
a
ask
little
you that
bit.
question, because there's a degree of hypocrisy about this, isn't there?
Well, energy prices have gone up. They're 8% of household income, household expenditure.
When you talk to people about where they're feeling the pinch, it's always energy prices very, very early.
And that's
You're grunting assent here, aren't you?
Yeah,
Yes,
no,
what do you
the
tell-
cost of living is a big issue.
And Jeremy, I get that point, and this is why we're investing. Those apprentices you saw, they're the people going in and installing smart meters, insulation in the home, energy efficient boilers.
Because they're paying you so much money.
No, because you'll see that companies like ours are investing in our customers' homes, are actually saving customers money because they're more energy efficient, and that's just one aspect of the investment that's going in to the energy industry.
Now, the question here is, the core question is the question of skills, isn't it?
Yeah.
Why is the basic level of skills in this country so low?
Well, I think apprenticeships went out of fashion. Essentially what happened is the old industry that had apprenticeships suffered, and the new industries weren't investing in apprenticeships, but we really are reversing that trend. As I said, 250,000 extra apprenticeships. We're putting more of the funding in the hands of the employers so they get exactly the training that they need, and that could potentially tackle this fundamental problem that the report identifies of the squeeze middle, people who don't have the skills and the training to hold down a steady middle income, good earning job. We could tackle that with this massive expansion of apprenticeships we're now delivering.
You're not doing anything about bringing down energy prices either, are you?
Well, as you know, I mean, we had this, the Prime Minister talked about this week. I mean, the fact is, you can also bring in competition and bring in the people the opportunity of going for the lowest tariff that's available. We're doing that. You can tackle both sides of the equation. Better trained people with well-paid jobs, and absolutely, competition, contestability, getting the best deal on offer to hold down prices.
Now, what conclusion did you come to about what's gone wrong with the basic desire to acquire skills in the workforce here?
I think there's a problem with matching whether those skills will help you find the right kind of work. We've seen a change in the structure of the employment market and the economy. In the 10 years we're in now, 2010 to 2020, we will as a country create 2 million professional level jobs, 400,000 service level jobs, but during that same 10 years we will lose 800,000 mid-level administration and manufacturing jobs. And so matching up the skills you're going to get and seeing that gaining those skills will actually earn you more during your working lifetime is why we need a joined up policy around this, so that the skills agenda matches up with the economic policy to see Britain being able to create jobs in that mid-level size.
I think you find a lot of companies are not investing in the skills that they're used to, and that's something that we see some of our engineers get poached by other companies that aren't investing. And I think one of the things the government could do is give more support to recognise apprentice schemes and ensure that, for example, when we let contracts for local government, we always go for the lowest price. That's the way it works. But actually you should look at how many people have been trained, what are the lasting skills that have been laid down here.
What essentially you want is you want a form of bonded labour, really, don't you? You train somebody, you want them to be compelled to stay with you until 2 or 3 years?
96% of our engineers stay with us because they want to, Jeremy, because they can develop they want to develop their career. But the point that I'm making is that other companies are not investing in the same way.
I think this poaching problem is exaggerated. I think all the evidence is that if you invest in training your workforce, they are loyal and they stick with you. And I think the poaching is not as serious a problem as it's going to be. I think there are problems for small companies, and we're trying to both reduce the red tape so they take on more apprentices, and we're also providing a bigger cash bonus for every small company that takes on an apprentice, an extra £1,500, because it really does matter.
Yeah, and I think the relationship with the unions that we've touched on there, I mean, we work hard with our union relationships, and we like to think of them as partners, and I think that's the right way, in the modern world.
Would it be easiest, do you think, or one of the mechanisms you could use, would be to raise the minimum wage to the living wage level. Do you think that would be a help?
I think that would make a huge difference to many families across the country. I think we are seeing people who are really just struggling, who are working on minimum wage at the moment, and are just really not making ends meet. And we see that all the time through the work that we do on the website. But I think also it is about women in work as well. And
okay, we're going to come to that
Right,
aspect in
yeah.
just a moment. But before we leave the question of the minimum wage, you've already conceded there's a problem. There is an element of a solution here. Will you raise the minimum wage? Will you match the minimum wage and the living wage?
Well, what we can do is we can improve the living standards of people on the minimum wage by taking them out of tax. And for the first time this year, we've now got people on the minimum wage who are not paying income tax. Until this year, you could be on the minimum wage and facing an income tax bill as well. So that's something that governments can do. I am wary about increasing the minimum wage substantially because there's a real risk that it hits employment. And after all, we've created over 1 million new jobs in the private sector, even in the past 2 years during this austerity.
Let's just
That shows
ask
you can make things
do you
work.
worry about the raising of the minimum wage?
No, I don't at all. We pay well above the
There's
minimum
an
wage.
employer.
And I think there are
Yes, and he's free
sectors...
to. He's free to.
There
And
are
you
sectors that
Well, then why are you
actually
worrying about
could
what-
afford. We found in the report there are sectors where jobs will not move overseas. If you're working in a shop or working in catering, you can't do that from China. So let's make sure we pay the right minimum wage for the right
Okay,
sectors.
let's go on to this question then of women in the workplace, because one of the really big changes of the last 50 years that in order to maintain the standard of living they feel they need, it's now the norm very often for both parents to work. That in turn creates a need for some way of caring for children. Again, here are some